Greetings, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for taking part today in our webinar called Tale of Two AI Cities, a riff on Charles Dickens indeed, but meant to showcase the initiatives both the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and the Quebec regions have been conducting to further artificial intelligence. I'm joined today by our esteemed guests. First, Julien Billot, Chief Executive Officer for Scale AI, Canada's AI supercluster. Thank you. Ivan Lam, Director of Strategy and CEO Office of the Applied Science and Technology Research Institute of Hong Kong, or ASTRI for short, Hong Kong's Applied Science think tank. And Mark McLean, Senior Director, America's Asia Entrepreneurship, Montréal Internationall. A little bit about myself. My name is Christopher Chen, Head of the InvestHK Presence for Canada. We're a bureau of the Hong Kong government that initiates foreign direct investment and trade, bringing Canadian companies to Asia via Hong Kong. It is our remit to strengthen Hong Kong's role as Asia's leading international business center and to attract economically and strategically important investments. AI happens to be one of those strategically important investments, along with fintech, life science, and wealth management. Today, each speaker will give a very brief introduction as to their organization, and after that, we will delve into a Q&A session to go into the specifics of the AI initiatives of Hong Kong and Quebec. But first, a little housekeeping. We welcome questions, but ask if you can submit them into the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please keep your questions topical to AI in the two jurisdictions, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. And with that, I'd like to give the court to Julien.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Very, very pleased to be here today. Basically, I'm the CEO of Scale AI and wanted to give you some words about Scale AI. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you will see it now. Is it okay? Sufficiently big, okay. So basically at Scale AI, our goal is to really support AI-driven supply chains. And the way to do it is we came from an initiative by the federal government, the Canadian federal government, who created back in 2017 5 superclusters, one in British Columbia around digital technology, one in Saskatchewan around protein innovation, one in Toronto and Ontario about next generation manufacturing, one in Halifax and St. John's, Newfoundland about ocean technology, and ourselves in Montreal the goal is to create and to introduce AI in supply chain. So altogether, we share $1 billion of funding, and we are here to support innovation. At Scale AI, our mandate, very simple, is really bring AI from lab to field. We'll talk lengthy about this. We recognize that Montreal and Canada are very strong in AI fundamental research, but one of the challenges is how to introduce AI in companies, and that's one of our challenges. The second one is really to empower Canada as a hub for intelligent supply chains. Canada, for different geographical and economical reasons, is very strong in supply chains. And obviously, we can improve our competitivity by introducing more AI into supply chains. Altogether, our mandate is to help create job and wealth for Canada by leveraging AI in supply chain operations. We had access to a lot of government funding, $230 million from the federal government, $53 million from the government of Quebec. And basically, we are an investment and innovation hub, which is focusing on accelerating commercialization and adoption for AI-powered supply chains. We have different programs, actually 4 different programs. All around in gray, that's our support to the AI ecosystem, both in Montreal and in Canada, to foster collaboration. The blue one, which is the most important one, 2/3 of our funding, will go to support industrial projects, both adoption projects where companies adopt AI in their operations, or commercialization projects where we help companies create product and services embedding AI, and so we help them dig extra layers in their value chain and in their products. The yellow one, the workforce development, that's a very important program. We recognize that AI will not grow if we don't take care about talent and workforce development. I think we also speak about this. So 1/4 more or less of our funding will go on initiative to promote workforce training, talent, and research chairs in AI. And the last one, around 20% of our funding, will go to what we call an acceleration program to support incubators and accelerators in the Canadian ecosystem that are supporting actually startups in AI and supply chain to be sure that innovation will be there for the next generation by promoting innovation to startups. So these are programs, and basically the way we do it, so I will not repeat that, that's the 5 programs we're working on, It's really trying to target all companies in every step of their maturity. We recognize a lot of companies just have a very preliminary understanding of AI. That's why we created a program to help them understand AI, then a program to explore opportunities, to be more focused about how AI can be introduced in their operations. Finally, to help them build industrial projects with a blueprint and then an AI project by introducing software in their operation. And finally, helping them to really introduce successfully the software by looking at evolution and training them about change management. Altogether, we have funding 45 projects already for a total value of project of $151 million. We have invested on our side $60 million. Most of them are for SMEs. 65% of projects are made by SMEs, pan-Canadian, in Quebec and outside of Quebec, and covering 6 industries: manufacturing, transportation, retail, energy, agriculture, and health. And that's it for Scale AI. Thank you. I'm very eager to answer your questions.
Thank you, Julien. Next is Ivan. Please, your introduction.
Let me stop.
Let me share my screen here. 1 second. Great. Thank you, Christopher, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour. I'm Ivan Lam, the Head of Strategy at the Hong Kong Applied Life Science and Technology Research Institute, or ASTRI in short. It's a pleasure to be here today. ASTRI is a government-funded applied R&D center here in Hong Kong. We're not-for-profit, and our mandate is to technology enable businesses based in the city, so they can operate more efficiently, create better customer experience, and make more sustainable economic and societal impact. Let's just say you're a technology company in Canada looking to tap into the Asian market, as Christopher mentioned about. You can use Hong Kong as a bridge. And I can think of 3 key reasons why Hong Kong would be your top destination to support your plan. So it's a start. Hong Kong is Asia's most Canadian ecosystem. There are over 300,000 Canadians living in the city. I'm one of them. More than 100 Canadian firms, including major banks and insurance companies, have their offices here. So naturally, there's a strong tie between the 2 economies. Now, second, we're a top IPO venue with world-class infrastructure and a vibrant and digitally advanced ecosystem. Now, among other things, there's good IP protection, access to capital, talents from universities that are ranked among the top 25 to 100 in the world, incubation support from the government for innovation and technologies, and as well, unparalleled market access into the rest of China and Asia. Now, worth mentioning is that Hong Kong is part of the Greater Bay Area, or the GBA, which is the world's biggest integrated city cluster, with a population of 66 million and a combined GDP of $2 trillion US. So Hong Kong really plays a pivotal role as an innovation and technology hub in the region. And that leads to the 3rd reason that I mentioned about. We have a vibrant and a very diverse technology startup ecosystem here in the city. Now, in 2019, there was over $1 billion in Canadian worth of investment that's pumped into about 3,000 startups here in the city. And overall, we have 8 unicorns. 2 of them are in logistics, 4 of them are in fintech, and then the other one is in e-commerce, and 1 in AI service domains. And most of these guys are in either Series C or Series D, and have a valuation as high as over $10 billion Canadian. Now, by the way, a quarter of these startups here in the city founded by foreigners, and that really shows how diverse our ecosystem is. Now, the Hong Kong government has recently committed an equivalent of more than 17 billion equivalent, 17 billion Canadian dollars in the innovation and technology industries. And that's exactly how ASTRI comes in as an applied research center. There are 5 government-funded research centers here in the city. ASTRI is the designated center for information and communication technologies. We're about 21 years old, and with a team of 600 plus engineers and a patent portfolio of close to 900. Now, our expertise is organized in 5 different groups. Starting at the bottom left, we have the integrated circuits and systems, which is the building blocks for all hardware. And we focus on 3rd generation ICs to make devices smaller, less power consuming, and more cost effective for devices used in IoT and communication technologies. Those are the other 2 teams. Now, these devices would then be enhanced with security and privacy features done by the trusted technology experts, and they are then made smarter by the AI and big data team. And that's how these 5 teams are collaborating together to deliver applications in the 5 core areas, including smart city, fintech, health tech, intelligent manufacturing, and application-specific ICs. Let me give you a glimpse of how we leverage technologies to make impacts into various industries. Now, leveraging AI from detecting water leaks to improving public transport operations to improving law enforcement, leveraging data analytics and machine learning and so on. We're making our city management and operations much smarter, safer, and greener. Now, as a global financial center, we've also built Hong Kong into a global fintech hub using AI, blockchain, cybersecurity, and data analytics. Now, with AI techniques, we've built a smarter healthcare system, a smarter education system that's more inclusive, and also a safer food supply chain. Now, I mentioned about strong IP protection and a good legal framework. And we've also been transforming Hong Kong into an advanced manufacturing center for strategic industries as well. So in short, if you're looking to expand into mainland China and or the rest of Asia and want to bridge technology gaps, leveraging government resources, whether it's IP, expertise, funding, tax reduction, and so on, we're here to help. So let me pause here for a second, and I'll be happy to discuss more in the Q&A. Back to you, Christopher.
Thank you, Ivan. And now, Mark.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Let me grab my screen share screen. Give me 1 sec. I gotta pull up our Windows. So yeah, Ivan, I really like your presentation, and it's funny, it's the first time I've actually heard the presentation for Hong Kong, but it is remarkably similar to how we sell Montreal, which I think is really exciting. I think it shows that we are the 2 AI cities. I think there is some synergy, some overlap, which is really, really exciting. But it's again, I'll go through my presentation, and I think some of you will be able to see that how similar we present our cities, and how the reason we both think and feel, and I think believe our cities are 2 extremely strong cities for artificial intelligence as a whole. Just quickly, myself, I work at an organization called Montreal Internationall. We are, you can see some awards here. We're not shy to talk about them. We won the best economic development organization from 2 different two different work categories last year. We like to present it as if you won the Olympics and the World Cup at the same time, or as a Canadian, you won the Stanley Cup and you finished first at the same time, right? So it's really fun. We're an organization that helps companies open offices in Montreal, do more business in Montreal. I've been with the organization about 5 years now. I'm extremely fortunate that I've been lucky to work on a number of the AI projects that came to the city. The territory where I spend the most of my time is in Silicon Valley in the western US, Seattle a little bit. There's a lot of big names there that some of you might have heard of. Google, Facebook, Amazon. We've done a project with Samsung in the past. Just a lot of big companies. So because of that, I became the AI expert at Montreal International for selling AI. I am by no means an AI expert. You put the formulas in front of me, I might get a little bit confused. I did not bad in math in high school, but I don't think I did much further than that. So, but to sell Montreal, to present the ecosystem, and that's what I'm here for, is I've been really fortunate to be able to do that for the past 5 years. And I really believe we have one of the best ecosystems in the world. So quickly, I was going to give a quick presentation on why I feel that, why we've seen a lot of interest in Montreal, and why we're doing well with AI as a whole in the city. The way I like to present it is it's 4 reasons plus 1 that really make the difference for Montreal. And here's kind of our table of content of why Montreal is doing so well, why we're seeing a ton of investment, a ton of startup success, a ton of attraction of companies, and a ton of local leaders doing well. So really this kind of sums up what I've done for my past 5 years. And I joke a bit because I haven't been the lead on all these projects. I haven't been involved in all these. There's a lot going on within this one slide here. But again, over the past 4 or 5 years, this is where it started. This is what's happened in the city. This is why it's been so much fun selling Montreal and Montreal to the world. With all these names, I don't need to go through them all, but you could see all the names there. It started with Google a number of years ago, and then it hasn't stopped. At one point in 2018, 2019, we were making an announcement every week of new companies setting up in the city. These are a lot of applied AI also. There's a lot of fundamental research, but there's a lot of applied as well. And you'll see a lot of names here, and I'm not exaggerating when if there's a big name that you don't see here, or a name that you're familiar with, working on artificial intelligence within the world, we've either had discussions with them or have ongoing discussions with them, or expect an announcement, right? We're extremely fortunate to be selling Montreal these days because you could see what we've been able to attract over time. So really, when I get into it, like I said, there's 4 reasons plus 1. So the first reason I like to say is the history of AI in Montreal. And I use these 3 professors as our example. They've been in Montreal for more or less their entire careers. Professor Benjo, Professor Pinot, Professor Precop. Unbelievable professors, very well-regarded professors within the AI community. Yoshua Benjo, for those who aren't familiar with him, he's the most cited computer scientist in the world, or at least he was last year. I don't know if it still is, but last year he was still the most cited computer scientist in the world. He's considered one of the, and it's a funny term, but one of the godfathers of deep learning, a subset of AI. He is, without question, one of the forefront experts in the world in artificial intelligence, specifically in deep learning. Joel Pinot and Doina Precop do another subsector of AI called reinforcement learning. They're based out of McGill University. Again, both extremely well respected. Joel runs Facebook research in Montreal. Doina is a senior at DeepMind in Montreal. Again, both AI, well-regarded AI research institutes. Right? And they've been doing AI in Montreal for more than 20 years. They lived through the AI winters and everything else. So we have the history of AI in Montreal. We're not a city that just picked it up, gravitated to it, or had a few professors. We have a number of really well-established professors. I use those 3 as examples, but you could look at a number of different organizations, see professors of people that have been working here for more than 20 years on different AI research. So beyond the history, we have the federal and provincial support. And I won't get into this too much, but the one that I always like to highlight, and we're fortunate today to have the CEO of Scale AI on the call also, a lot of the support we could see, this is a snapshot of what happened over the past couple of years, of the support that the federal, provincial, municipal levels are getting in. The example I like to use here, and I'm not sucking up to Julien at all, it's Scale AI, right? The federal government, and he already mentioned it, put supercluster initiatives across the country. They put the headquarters of those initiatives in specific cities, and they weren't, it wasn't a random choice. And Julien mentioned already, the oceanography supercluster is on the East Coast by the water. That makes a lot of sense. The federal government chose the headquarters. It's a pan-Canadian project. It's for all of Canada, but the headquarters of it is in Montreal, right? And when the federal government chooses the headquarters for the AI supercluster in Montreal, I think it sends a message that they believe that the strongest city in Canada is Montreal. It is a pan-Canadian strategy. Toronto, Edmonton specifically are very strong also, but the headquarters is in Montreal. So take with that what you will. We have a number of other funding and strategic initiatives that the government has supported throughout the years. We also have, and this is to continue on that point, this is the hub that's being built in Montreal. A lot of support from the government for this. There is a neighborhood in Montreal, if you ever get a chance, it is a fantastic neighborhood. It's right behind Little Italy. So if you ever need a good coffee, it's not far from the AI Institute. But there are two old textile buildings that got reconditioned that are fantastic. It is unbelievable to see what's going on there. It is some of the best AI researchers in the world are within these two buildings. Yoshua Benjo started the Mila within this. It is the biggest pool of independent AI researchers in the world. You have Facebook within this building. You have Microsoft next door to this building. You have Samsung has a group in this building. You have a number of startups within this building. So this hub that's getting built, and I joke, but through osmosis, you can walk into this neighborhood and become an AI expert, right? The concentration of talent within these few city blocks is incredible. And again, here is for a map for those of you that know the city a little bit. You can kind of tell where just up above, not far, where everything is. Beyond the government support, the history, we have a talent pool, right? Montreal has this pool of talent and this pipeline of talent coming through it. Part of it is, as I mentioned already, or a big part of it is specific for AI, is Mila. Mila is a combination of a number of universities and researchers that got together and formed this institute. Specifically, the two main ones are the McGill University and Université de Montréal, Montreal University, that have built this institute in Montreal. Beyond that, we have been rated one of the best student cities in the world. We are currently, I think, the best student city, and from this last ranking, the best student city in North America. We attract international students from all over the world. We have a large student population that continues funneling talent to AI and also any type of project within the city, right? Your next pool of talent, it's great to have the senior people, but what you need for your company is the next pool of talent, pipeline of talent, and we have that within Montreal because of our university ecosystem. Again, some stats that you could see here with 13,000 students enrolled in AI-related programs, and maybe they're not AI specific, but AI-related programs. We have more than 600 independent researchers within the city. We have the pool of talent that you could need for any type of AI project. We do have it in Montreal. Beyond that, another factor I like to say is that we're able to attract talent, right? These are an example of researchers that have come or come back to Montreal to work here, right? And these are, again, world leaders. I mentioned three earlier, Duana Prikop, Pinot, Yoshua Benjo. You have a number of other very well-respected leaders that have come to Montreal. You go La Rochelle, it's a little bit of a cheat to use him. He is a Quebecer, but he was working in Boston for Twitter and came back to Montreal to head Google DeepMind. Arina Riche, and I'm trouble pronouncing her name, she came to Mila last year to be a senior researcher at Mila and have a research chair. Leila El Asri is a French researcher, worked at Microsoft for a long time, is now at Borealis AI. And Carolina is Argentinian, and she came to work at Strategy AI, a great startup in Montreal, right? So you're seeing this influx of talent. We've created this pool of talent and this gravitational pull in Montreal to pull these people to the city, which is really, really fun. Beyond that, so now we have the pool of talent, we have the government support, we have the history, we have the startup ecosystem, right? Montreal is one of the best startup ecosystems, in my opinion, in the world. There's so much happening here. We are a young startup ecosystem. but we have a lot going on here. And to go through it, and I think my time is almost up, so I'll try and run through the last 2 slides quick. The reason I use Montreal as a real strong startup ecosystem is because of Techstars. Techstars, if you're not familiar, is one of the best AI startup incubators in the world. They put different accelerators and incubators in strategic locations. For example, in Israel, they have their cybersecurity. In London, England, they have their fintech accelerator. And in Montreal, they put their AI accelerator, right? This is the only AI accelerator in the world for Techstars. They are international investors. They're an international organization. They chose Montreal for it. Again, reinforcing Montreal as an AI hub. Some startups here, some incredible startups here. Again, and we could run through them again afterwards. And the last, and I'll run through the last slide because my time's up. The last thing that makes a difference. So I ran through the 4 things that really a lot of cities can say they have. The really, really big difference in Montreal is the collaboration, right? The teams in Montreal, the MILA, the startups, the research institutes, the universities, the government, everybody is working together within the city. Everyone understands the mission of the city, like any city, like anything. There are discussions sometimes and arguments, but there's so much collaboration. I use our AI for Good initiatives as that example, because the picture here, you can see people from Microsoft, from Google, from Samsung, from Montréalistes, from MILA, from more or less every organization in Montreal, all get together once a year, and it's starting now for TechAid to help AI for Good. But beyond that, there's a number of other initiatives that they work together for to help build the city. So that's Montreal in a nutshell. I might have went over my time by 2 minutes. I'm extremely sorry. But I'm very excited to speak about Montreal. When I get going, sometimes I don't stop. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. We have a bit of a late arrival. Claire Yu, Director of Asia Pacific and Middle East, Foreign Direct Investment at Investissement Quebec International. Arrived a little bit late to the game, but she is one of our esteemed guests and key panelists. Claire, if you don't mind introducing yourself and IQI to our crowd, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really sorry for being late. I got a little urgent matter to handle this morning. Sorry for that. So I'm just trying to share my screen. Are you actually seeing my screen? Okay, perfect. So very quickly, a few words on myself and also the organization that I'm representing this morning. So my name is Claire Yu, and I represent Invest Quebec International this morning for this panel. And I'm in charge of the Asia Pacific and Middle East division at Invest Quebec International for the FDI attraction mandate. And prior to, this is a relatively new role that I took up last summer, but prior to that, I spent 13 years with Mark McLean under the same roof at Montreal International, where I was heading the Asia Pacific team there as well, attracting foreign direct investment from the Asia Pacific region. So after such a wonderful presentation that Mark has just delivered, I feel that I have no more actually additional comments on the AI ecosystem. And Mark has indeed the best salesperson to promote the AI ecosystem in Montreal. So probably I would just concentrate what I'm going to say about Invest Quebec. So Invest Quebec, it's a very large organization. Especially since last summer, a couple of mergers has took place. So now we're a team of about 1,000 people with offices in Quebec, 30 offices, and also 12 offices abroad in Europe, in the Americas, and also in Asia as well. So Invest Quebec is the economic development agency, but at the same time, it's also the financial arms of the Quebec provincial government. So the mission is really to support not only local companies, but also international companies to grow and to invest and to achieve technological innovations as well. So there are a lot of our colleagues who are actually working as bankers. So basically they're getting very innovative to to provide financing support to local companies and international companies. But at the same time, under the newly restructured component, which is called Invest Quebec International, we are the economic development arm of the provincial government and doing not only investment attraction, but also export promotion for local companies. So here gives a very quick overview on who are our clienteles, and basically we work with Quebec companies of all sizes, and organizations and also international companies already established in Quebec, and international companies who are not here yet, but has a potential and interest to collaborate with our local ones. I'm thinking of a lot of companies based in Hong Kong and which will potentially become our clientele. So speaking of the services on the financing side, and this I think slide illustrates very well the different financing tools that Invest Quebec has been using in order to support companies being local or internationally on the financing side. So there are a lot of investment funds, and there are different types of financial products, being the loans, loan guarantees, and Invest Quebec also has the venture capital, which invests directly into companies, but also invest into locally based VC funds. And then at the same time, Invest Quebec, there's a division handling the tax credits, which, for example, the multimedia tax credit and the e-business tax credits, which actually subsidize companies for their growth. And in some cases, also Invest Quebec can take equity participation into large-scale investment projects. So I don't think I'm going to spend too much. It just basically gives, it's a very visual tool just to illustrate how the different types of services on the financing side are provided to companies at different stage of their development, from the pre-startup, startup, all the way to go to their growth, and even to the for this succession stage of their growth as well. So I am our division is part of the Invest Quebec International team, which actually has two major mandates, as I just mentioned very briefly. So we do FDI attraction, and we also help local companies with export and internationalization as well. So on the FDI side, we work in close collaborations with organizations such as Montreal International, but also very closely with our local networks such as Scale AI when we welcome a newcomer to the local ecosystem. Yeah, so basically I would just go very quick. So basically this is kind of a snapshot of our services that we provide to international companies. And Hong Kong is actually a market that we have worked for quite several years, both at Montreal International and at Invest Quebec as well. So today, I really appreciate the opportunity of having this opportunity to present towards the audience, not only in Hong Kong, but also I believe a part of the audience come from Canada as well, about our services. So I think, the objective is we're there, and whenever the companies are ready and want to reach out to us and want to know what we can do and what are the ecosystems and what can be the potential kind of collaboration with our local companies as well. Both Mark, myself, and Julien, we're all here to facilitate your setup or your collaboration with local companies.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for the introductions, everybody. At this stage, we'd like to get into the Q&A. We've had a number of questions that were sent in previously, and a number of questions have been rolling in. I'd like to address the first one, usually regarded as the elephant in the room, which is the political climate between Canada and China. I would like to remind everybody that China and the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region are actually two different jurisdictions. While Hong Kong is a part of China, there is actually a legal framework in both a governmental, regulatory, and technological firewall that separates the two. So investing or putting initiatives into Hong Kong does not necessarily mean that it goes into China. And for any entity that chooses to go into Hong Kong has a choice of where they want to expand beyond Hong Kong, whether that may be Southeast Asia, South Asia, mainland China, Japan or Korea is their choice. In terms of the separation between military and civilian technology development, the Hong Kong government does not respond on behalf of the mainland Chinese government. But again, I would echo that any entity that goes into Hong Kong is not going into China. It is going into Hong Kong. And it is the company's own choice to work with the mainland Chinese ecosystem. So one of the core systems actually is dealing with basically, how did AI develop in Montreal, and where's it going? Where do you think it's going? And I suppose that question can be directed towards Julien or Mark.
Want to begin? Okay, so basically actually I think fundamental research was very at the beginning. I think Mark's presentation was very clear on that. It all began with Yoshua Benjo and different researchers back in the 90s actually. But the thing was, Montreal was very strong in terms of research, but Montreal needed to create a full ecosystem. And I think all the initiatives around Montréal Internationall, Investissement Québec, Scale.io, others were to create this ecosystem. So you can represent this ecosystem as a kind of a triangle in a sense. You have the fundamental researchers, students at the top. You have startups actually on one part of the triangle and industry on the other part of the triangle. And the goal of Montreal is really to make the link between the three partners in a sense by linking university and research to startups. That was the case for programs like Creative Destruction Lab, NextAI, Centec, and others. Make the link between university and industry. That was the case with programs like Ivado or Ivado Labs or companies like that, and between industry and startups. And as Scale.io or Investment Québec or Montréal Internationall, we all play the role to create a glue around this triangle by all providing services, attracting people, or funding projects at the end. Typically, and at Scale.io, most of our projects involve startups or SMEs, big companies, and universities. That's a way to not only give funding, but also create synergy in the ecosystem. So I think for the future, research was first. Obviously, it's a priority for Montreal to continue support and increase research, fundamental research in AI. But part of the future for Montreal is really creating this ecosystem and strengthening this ecosystem by strengthening all the branches of the ecosystem.
Yeah, Julien obviously is a much more of an expert than me, but I think the way I present it also is we need Montreal to grow and to continue maturing the same way the ecosystem, AI ecosystem as a whole would, right? AI ecosystem as a whole, a lot of fundamental research done over the past while. We're seeing that again in some of the big organizations, and I deal with more of the international ones, so I'm a little more familiar with them. But the DeepMind, Facebooks, Googles of the world had a lot of fundamental research. Now we're seeing their fundamental research being applied to products. Maybe we might know it or not in our everyday lives, but in the same way, we need to see all the research in Montreal being applied to industry, being applied to products. We need to accelerate the Quebec industry. We need to make sure that it gets adopted within Quebec, within the companies within Quebec. We need to make sure that all the research within universities gets transferred into industry, because that is where everybody wins. If it stays within fundamental research, right, it's great. It's fun to be able to beat, and I joke, but to be able to beat Pac-Man real quick. But that's not where population as a whole benefits, right? So we need to see that continue moving forward. We need to see more of applied techniques, more research applied to industry and startups being developed here.
A question for Ivan. If you're a Canadian company, if I was a Canadian company or an American company wishing to set up Hong Kong, what support can Astri provide? Like what tactical, practical support can you provide for a company going in? And any examples? You're muted. Ivan, yeah, there you go.
Apologies, I was speaking to myself. Yeah, sure. We are a publicly funded organization in Hong Kong doing applied research for any company or businesses that are based here. So if you're a Canadian company wishing to expand into Asia or mainland China, definitely you can set up a business here in Hong Kong, and as long as you have an operation here, we are ready to help. So basically, we do projects. So we're project-based, and we do roughly about 100 projects a year, running for companies big and small, companies as big as Intel, Huawei, and the major banks and the authorities, our clients. We've also helped startups, grow and eventually became listed companies. And so typically we would start with a business pain point. Let's say if you're a technology company needing some help localizing your products and services, for example, or if you're not familiar with the local ecosystem and needing some help to bridge with the upstream research or other industry players, we would be able to help and scope out a project and then have a price tag to it. Now, let's say the project is $1 million and you have the choice of paying it in full, or you can pay as little as 25% and the government funds the rest. The more you pay, the more you get. And if you pay more than 50%, the IP goes to you. Otherwise, we would hold the IP on behalf of the government, and then we could license it to other people. But regardless of the amount of funding you would put into the project, there are additional incentives given by the government. There's 40% cash rebate on the amount of money that you spend on R&D. And also there are tax incentives by the government. The first $2 million, you get 300% credit. Anything above $2 million Hong Kong, you get 200% credit, and that's no cap. So if you plan to be a profit center here in Hong Kong, there's a lot of incentives to do R&D with centers like ourselves.
Thank you. Here's a question for Claire and Julien. What if you are if you're an AI startup in the Montreal or Quebec ecosystem? What kind of role does both the government, a government agency such as IQI, or a technology cluster like Scale AI help? And we're talking not theoretical help, tactical help.
Sure. So probably I may start. We're talking about a Montreal-based startup and looking at probably potentially going international. So there are definitely many different ways that IQI can help. So first of all, like knowing their needs. So on the international kind of exposure, the team at IQI will be able to help them identify potential partners at the international level and try to make the connections happen as well. And at the same time, from the financing point of view, if the company is looking for different financial products in order to help stimulate a further growth of the company, there are many different ways, like through the VC funds that IQ managed or invest directly, or through the different programs such as SL, or like through the tax credit that IQ administrates. Like for example, if the company is more on the applied AI side and is into software development, and there is a very interesting program that is quite unique, that directly administrated by IQ called e-business. So basically subsidized 30% of the salaries, and is refundable tax credit, which means that it's basically cash rebate. So those are all different ways to support companies like Montreal-based, Quebec-based with their future growth. So probably Julien, you may want to add to that.
Yeah, actually, what I could say is very complimentary of what you say, Claire, which is, as Scale AI, we help in two different ways. First of all, we help by supporting incubators and accelerators. So we totally recognize startups, depending on where they are and what state they are, need support. So at Scale AI, we support 28 startups and incubators, and accelerators across the country, supporting around 200 startups in AI and supply chain by giving money basically to incubators and accelerators to provide a better support for the startups that are part of these incubators. So that's a huge support. That's something we do to help startups grow, get more structured, get business. That's one side of the equation. The other side is obviously the best service you can give to a startup. Of course, it's funding, but it's more importantly customers. And in Scale AI ecosystem, we try to connect startups with industrial partners. And we have already funded close to 7 projects now with startups typically going out of Creative Destruction Lab, both in Montreal and Toronto. So typically in different sectors. So we have funded projects where these startups were involved with industrial partners for significant amount of money, which is great for them because on one side, that's creating new business opportunities. And obviously when you have more business opportunities, you can get more funding. So we are really taking advantage of this ecosystem to help startups grow, either by the support from incubators and accelerators, either by connecting them with industry partners to get access to customers they would not have access without us.
Thank you. Thank you, Claire and Julien. A question for Ivan. What advantages can Canadian companies gain by leveraging R&D resources in Hong Kong in order to access the mainland Chinese market? And related to that, would it make more sense to collaborate directly with a research center in mainland China instead?
That's a very good question, actually, Christopher. I think I mentioned about in my presentation, there's a lot of good reasons why businesses want to set up here in Hong Kong. Part of it is a strong legal foundation, good IP protection, and a lot of good talents from top universities here in Hong Kong. Specific to AI, there are about 4 to 5 different joint labs between the industry and the universities, specifically focused on different types of AI research. And most importantly, there's an international ecosystem that bridges mainland China with the rest of the world. As some of you might know, the Chinese government has a dual circulation economic policy. On one side, they have a domestic policy that promotes collaboration within China. And then there's a international circulation that goes between Hong Kong and the rest of the world. So Hong Kong acts as a natural bridge between those two circulation policies. And most importantly as well would be the diversity of the ecosystem, very international. And also, as I mentioned, it's the most Canadian ecosystem you can find in Asia. And so there's a lot of good reasons why businesses want to set up here. And I just wanted to give you one example. As Chris, in the last question you asked about if there's any examples of companies coming to Hong Kong, I can name Intact Financial Corporations. I'm sure most Canadians know that they're one of the largest insurers here in Canada. They came to Hong Kong about 2 years ago and set up their operation in the Science Park with about, I think it was a few people at the beginning, and now they've grown up to about 25 people. What they do is they apply a lot of the AI algorithms and projects to help improve the efficiency and customer experience back in Canada. So sourcing talents here in Hong Kong and also tapping into the Greater Bay Area, so using Hong Kong as a bridge as well.
Thank you, Ivan. Very interesting about Intact. I worked on that one myself. This is a question for Mark, and I think it taps into your personal experiences. How is the Quebec/Montreal ecosystem different from other ecosystems such as San Francisco?
We have better food in Montreal, but generally, I think I touched on it a bit in my presentation. When people ask me that, right? San Francisco, Silicon Valley, right? Whole different model, it's a whole different beast, right? The amount of VC funding there, the amount of people there, right? But with that said, the difference is, I think, in Montreal, and compared to San Francisco and compared to other cities, in my opinion, is collaboration and the ecosystem that's built here. I'm extremely fortunate. I've said it a couple times. I get to travel. I used to get to travel to San Francisco, and hopefully at some point again, I will get to travel to San Francisco and meet with clients there and work with them. But it's a different ecosystem that's built there, right? It's not a collaborative ecosystem. There's a lot of competition. Competition is a good thing. I'm not saying competition is bad. We need competition. It's important. But there's very little collaboration going on within the San Francisco ecosystem or Silicon Valley and most other ecosystems, not like the way you see here, not where you see most of the organizations here working together to build the city. And what you'll also see in Montreal is the students, the support, I think the buy-in of everybody of what's going on in the city, right? And I compare that to other ecosystems where we have the buy-in of all the actors. And Julien mentioned it before, Claire mentioned it before, where you have all the actors that are bought in going in the same direction, right? And I think that makes a really, really big difference, especially to startups, to earlier stage companies, where they're coming in and they won't have the resources of a DeepMind, of a Facebook to buy up everybody. But when you could come in and partner with someone like Scale AI, when you come in and work with a startup that's coming out of the Creative Destruction Lab, when you're able to come in and recruit students out of school that might have less experience but are just as smart and ambitious as anybody, I think that's really where it makes a difference and really can drive our ecosystem forward.
Oh, probably, if I may, I may just like chip in on this topic, because I think definitely I agree completely with what Mark has mentioned. It's just like another element that I want to add to this is because the core of the AI ecosystem is really about talents. And I think in Montreal, in Quebec, in Canada, we have this exceptional open-minded capacity to welcome talents from around the world, which I'm not saying that it's not the same thing in US, in California, but I think just from the immigration process point of view, definitely the programs here that we have in Quebec is more streamlined and made it easy to have international talents from around the world to come here.
Thank you. On that point, if I may, I totally agree. I think innovation and technology is not a zero-sum game, and cross-pollination of talents across different ecosystems, it's a key to help grow the overall ecosystem. We've been also working on some potential collaboration with Canadian universities and research organizations on how to jointly do projects together that would benefit both sides. So I would definitely support, more collaboration within the ecosystem.
Yes, thank you, Ivan, Claire, and Mark. One of the key topics that has come across AI globally is the availability of talent. That is the single biggest bottleneck for a faster development in almost every single ecosystem of the world. And it's good to see that open collaboration, immigration policies, and cross-border R&D is actually one way of tapping into it. I think that the last question will be towards Ivan. What types of AI companies have proliferated in Hong Kong? What has anything taken you by surprise in terms of the sectors that have actually taken off?
Well, there are quite a number of companies in Hong Kong leveraging various different types of technologies. AI is definitely one of them. Specifically, I mentioned about the 8 unicorns in one of my slides. One of them is SenseTime, and it's a global leader in computer vision and deep learning, and it's also the first unicorn based in the Science Park. We've done some work with them way before they became a unicorn as well. And I think right now they are generating a revenue about $1.6 billion Canadian, if I remember correctly, in 2000. And they have a valuation over $10 billion Canadian. It's currently China's largest AI algorithm provider, providing various different types of recognition algorithm, ranging from image to facial recognition to enable better access control, identity biometric authentication, autonomous driving, smart healthcare, you name it. And they have actually expanded globally as well, in Japan, in Singapore, China, and Middle East. A lot of partnership as well. So this is just one example, and that's one key example. And there are many more examples, including startup in the logistics community, GoGoVan and Lalamove. They're homegrown from 2013, and they also have grown themselves into unicorns and expanded into other markets in Southeast Asia, some in the United States as well. Both of them are in Series C or D, if I remember correctly, and a pre-IPO stage. So very exciting for some of these startups, and a lot of them have collaborated with partners in different parts of the world, including North America and mainland China. So yeah, definitely very exciting time for the ecosystem.
Thank you, Evan. And that about wraps it up, because as we come to the close of the hour, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in this morning. I'd like to thank our esteemed panelists, Ivan, Julien, Mark, and Claire, for participating and providing valuable insights into your respective ecosystems. A recording of this webinar will be made available on the Montreal HKCBA website. So if you wish to view this again, please feel free. Please look out for emails from Montreal HKCBA on future events, and hope you tune in on other technology-based topics. There will be a number of them coming later this year. So thank you, everybody. And please have a good day. And if you're an AI company, please feel free to contact us if you are in the need of support or expansion growth strategies.
Thanks.
Everyone.
Thanks very much. Bye for
Okay,
now.
bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.